Hey, how's it going everyone? My name is Brandon Clements and welcome back to another video here on Glass Hand. So today what we're going to take a look at is taking a standard Unity scene and porting it over to HDRP. So there's going to be some roadblocks we're going to have to overcome, but all in all I think it's pretty straightforward once you know where to look. We're going to be using 2018.3 .ob12, so there's going to be a little bit of editor changes. We have a dockable project settings, which is awesome. And what you're seeing right now is what I did earlier today when I started blocking out this level. So once that wraps up, we'll go ahead and jump into Unity and we'll take a look at our scene, and we'll start from the standard render. I guess I should call it the built-in Unity renderer, and then we'll go into HDRP. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. Okay, so this is what our scene ended up looking like. It's definitely not finished at this point, but I had an idea that I wanted to kind of block out and just take a look at. It was kind of like this futuristic Tokyo kind of alleyway. It was going to be a VR scene back when I was doing a lot of VR stuff, and I just kind of wanted to flesh that out. Obviously there's like a lot if you go over here that's unfinished, but it's really cool to try to set up different kind of looks and see where your player would be actually walking around, what their angle of viewing things in the distance would be. So it's cool to play with shapes and silhouettes and just to try to put something together. So this is just the built-in Unity renderer. You can see there's some shaders here to do some blinking. We could do some shader graph stuff in HDRP to kind of mimic this. We just have screen space reflections on, so you can see that the object here at the very end of the alleyway is kind of blocking some of the reflections. It makes the scene feel a lot more grounded. If we didn't have that, it would feel pretty odd. But it's a simple scene. There's only one directional light that's in real time. There are two reflection probes, emissive materials. Let's see, what else do we have? We have light probes, and we're running around like 90 FPS or so with post-processing. So this is the old post-processing. So I just kind of made this scene without using anything new. And then we're going to take this and we're just going to make it new. So we're going to kind of just move it all over. So if you're familiar, all of our post-processing is done here on our camera. So what we're going to do is just remove this. And immediately you can see the scene changes dramatically. Post-processing is just that final kind of AAA quality that you can have really quickly. So we'll go ahead and delete the post-processing profile. We'll get this out of our project, and we're just going to delete the entire folder as well. One thing I will mention, I had to edit some of the post-processing to make it work in 2018.3. So this is a nice little forum post, and this is the magic of Unity. Everyone helps each other, and I had to open this mindrawer.cs and actually change the name here to Unity engine.postprocessing so it could actually find it. That was throwing an error, so you couldn't actually do what I was doing there without changing that. So good little side note. Okay, so let's take a look at some of my project settings here. This should be set on Ultra here, which is kind of inconvenient when you first start up Unity because it's always on very high, but you can see the difference between Ultra and very high. The biggest difference being the pixel light count moves up to 4, so you could have like 4 real-time pixel shading lights in the scene that would overlap. And then you can see that we don't want anti-aliasing because this is a deferred render scene. It's not forward shading. So we disable that. We have soft particles. We can do real-time reflection probes, and I think that's about it. And the shadow distance bumps up to 150, which is pretty long to draw shadows. It's a pretty far distance to draw shadows. Okay, so what else have we changed? In the player settings, let's see if we go to others. This is linear rendering, so we're not using gamma. We're telling everything to be computated in linear space. Everything here looks pretty good. I don't think we changed anything. Graphics is where we're actually going to put our render pipeline asset file here. So this is going to change to a scriptable render pipeline. So what we need to do is actually go to our packages, and most of these windows that I have is under the Window tab, Package Manager. The project settings is under Edit Project Settings. So that's actually popped out into a nice dockable tab in 2018.3 finally. I hated going to those menus all the time. Okay, so what we're going to do, I do have ProGrids in here to snap together some of these modular building pieces, which was really nice. But what we're going to do is go and fetch the high definition render pipeline asset from the package manager, and we're just going to have to wait for this to install. So the reason the package manager has all these different tools inside of it is because sometimes you don't need to have like the AR Core plugin, some of these other things inside of Unity. So instead of making Unity this large software and this big engine, you can still keep everything very lightweight in your project and just add it as you need it. Okay, so after we have brought the high definition render package into our project, the next thing is we're going to go back to the project settings here, and we're going to add a render pipeline asset. So right now we have none, so we need to come up here, we need to create rendering high definition render pipeline asset. Okay, so I'll just name it something very generic, like alleyway HD render pipeline asset. So this is really cool because you can just turn on features that you want in your game or your experience, and this is where you're going to go to for all your render passes, the settings, you know, if you're rendering deferred or forward. All of this is going to be controlled here in just this one asset. So we're going to put this into our graphics settings, and immediately it looks perfect. So what's happening right now is we need to have a lot of changes in our scene. So this is the main thing that you would see if you got this far. This purple is a shader error. So there's a few things we can do. This isn't a magic bullet by any means, but you can actually come up to let's see, edit render pipeline and upgrade. Let's see. Upgrade project materials for high definition materials. This should run through our entire project and actually change the shaders for us. So we'll go ahead and hit proceed, and we got a while to wait. So we'll check back in after this is done. So okay, we have now finished our script to go ahead and change every shader to the HD render pipeline. So you know, the good thing, everything that is an error is in this crazy obnoxious purple color. So what we need to do is just, I have this steel generic material, and I just want to apply it to some of these that I have missed. So why are all of these guys pink still in this way? Well, the reason being is if we click on this, for example, this will probably be simple enough. We need to go into this prefab and take a look at the shader. Well, right here we can see it's using a legacy shader. So sometimes when you write your own custom shaders, the script up here, edit, render pipeline, upgrade, even if we do upgrade selected material, so if we, you know, clicked here and then went ahead and ran that, so selected material and say proceed, it's not going to know what to do with this because it doesn't know what type of shader this is. So the only thing that we can do is basically just do it ourselves. So we have to come in here and add our texture maps back. I haven't found an easier way to do to fix this, but you know, it's not that bad. And I say that like, this isn't a game or anything. So, this would be a real pain in the ass if you had to go through and change all your own shaders. But if you need to change some of this by hand, I would suggest using the shader graph to do so. So let's see what we can do with this guy here. We're going to create a new HD lit graph. So we're going to call this neon sign matte. I probably should name that graph, but whatever. We'll go ahead and open up the shader editor. So this is what we have. We're going to dock this on the bottom. And quick introductory to shader graph. We're supposed to be able to see our, we have something called a blackboard, which we do not have. So let's close this real quick. We'll open shader graph again, and there is our blackboard. Sometimes that happens, but most of this stuff is in preview, so I can forgive it for now. Let's go ahead, and we're going to add a texture 2D. This is going to be our color input. Okay, so we add all of our variables in the blackboard here. So once that's created, we just drag that out from the blackboard, and you can see we can't plug that in straight away. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and grab a texture input, and we need to get the texture right here. Okay, so this is our UVs, and we have all the channels now, and we can go ahead and put that vector 4 into a 3. As you can see, we can put a vector 4 into a 3, but not a vector 2 into a 3. So you got to make sure that your data types are going to accept them correctly. So we'll just go ahead and put that into there. What we also could do is we could convert this vector 4 to a vector 3 by just coming in here and creating a node. And what we want is we want to be able to combine the channels. So we would just do something like this here, and we would just add all of them, and then we'd say RBG3 into the base color. So that's being more exact, but if you don't need an alpha channel, no reason to add it to the shader if you're not going to use it, I guess. So that's just how you can change that. So we can actually take these. We can select both of them. Let's hit Control C, and we're going to paste Control V, and this will be our hookup for our normal map. And do texture 2D, metallic, smoothness, and we will add this. We actually want all of them, so we can take this combine away, because as you remember, the red was going to be the metallic, and the alpha was going to be the smoothness. We want to go ahead and add one more for emission. So then we'll go ahead and we'll save this asset. We will show it in the project for us. And I'll just kind of collapse some of these. Actually, we probably needed to find that path again, but we'll just go ahead and create material. And you can always create materials off of this. So you can always right click and say, I want another material. And those will have the same properties, but this could be a neon sign here. That could be a neon sign there. But we'll just use one. And again, sorry, we'll just have to pop this back out. You can see that we don't have an option for the emission strength. What I'm going to do is add a color, and we'll call this emission color. And in the mode, we'll set it to HDR. We'll drag that out, and then we're going to create a multiply node. I have this HDR here. We'll set it to a little bit of red, and then we'll make it super bright. Okay, there we go. Found it. So as you can see, that will allow us to add that brightness and really get a super bright neon light. Just going to change this to the lit shader. and go ahead and just plug in our maps. This video, we're just going to swap it over to a transmission type of material, but in the next video you'll have to keep a lookout. We're going to go in and make this actually have some wind speed and have it dance and make a really cool vegetation shader. But for right now, we're just going to change this to lit. We're going to change the material type to, let's do translucent. So you can see we actually need some alpha, so we'll change this to transparent. And there we go. It looks way better. Actually looks like leaves. We'll enable the cutoff. And what this will allow us to do is set the alpha threshold to something that we want. So 0.5 looked really good. There's some other options in here. Some depth prepasses for transparency. We'll come back to that if we actually need it. And then we can do back then front rendering if we need it as well, just to get the translucency looking correct. So currently it says no diffusion profile settings have been assigned to the render pipeline asset. So, what does that mean? Well, if we go back to our pipeline asset and we look for our diffusion, right here we have none. So what we can do is come to the top here. We're going to create rendering diffusion profile. So we're going to call this vegetation. Have that created. We are going to assign that profile, and then we can start to do some really cool stuff. So since this is going to be vegetation, let's make this really obnoxious so we can actually see it working, and then we can dial it back. So the thickness map here, we'll want to go ahead and make sure it's very, very thin. And then the transmission tint, we can play around with these settings here. So let's kind of have the intensity up a little bit higher. Maybe the intensity higher here too. And a way we can actually see this is adding a light into the scene. So if we just create a new point light and we drag this kind of back behind here, then we'll set the profile to 1. Okay, so now you can really see it coming through. And there is a thickness setting here per shader that you can, per material, I should say. If I needed to create another material and then change the thickness, I can do so. But let's go back in and tweak these guys here, because this was ridiculous. We didn't need it that high. We'll change that back down. But our transmission here is the one that I believe. Notice with our leaves is that it's not double-sided, so only one side is rendering. So we have to set that to double-sided. And then we'll get all of our leaves showing back. You can see the actual transmission is very saturated. That you may want to play around with in your scene is this enable back to front rendering. So what that will do is it will render the back sides first, and then render the front. So that's something you may want. In our scene, we don't need that. With our profile a little bit more to get this how I want it. That is a little bit better, but our leaves aren't really this green color, so that kind of looks a little weird that I have it set so green. So I promised in the next video with shader graph we would do the flickering, so for now I'm just going to go ahead and get these looking correct. now we have our final asset that has been converted. So all the shaders, everything is good. We should see no purple anymore. No more. Through and rebake our reflection probes just to make sure that we don't get any weird errors on our reflection probes. And then I'm also going to make sure that this is set correctly. So what I want to do is I'll do color temperature here, and I'll pick a nice cool color, and then maybe brighten it just a little bit. And you know, this indirect multiplier we can play around with a little bit too. And then I'm going to bump up the resolution to 1024 on the HD shadows. So I'm going to change this to 4096 just so we can get some super crisp shadows in here. It's definitely overkill for the shadow map size, but I love how crisp this looks. And then seeing this nice shadow detail on the ground here. It's definitely a lot better than what we were getting in just the standard Unity renderer. So you can see there is still something happening here that that is not working correctly, and and it looks like a particle system. Okay, so that's good to know. Let's go ahead and try to find this particle system, which we did right here. Let's change this to a let's do an unlit shader. Okay, so go ahead and change that to unlit, and then we just drop the color, and let's go ahead and change this to maybe like a bluish color, and then we can tweak the alpha cutoff a little bit too. So, and if you wanted to see them a little bit better, this looks like snow in a way. You could add just a tiny bit of emission. Sweet. You can see we have a little bit of rain. You know, if you really wanted to do something like this and have rain in your scene, I would highly recommend to use the VFX graph, which I will do another video on the VFX graph because it is amazing. It's GPU particles, but you know, if you needed to reuse or repurpose a particle system you'd already built in Shuriken, you could still use this. And it looks like my emissive color. I would just dismiss the emissive color just because it was a little too obvious. Okay, so now we have everything running in the HD render pipeline. You can see the frames per second are great, but obviously there's still so much that we can do to this scene. Thanks for checking this one out, guys. I really had a lot of fun kind of showing you how you can take the old standard Unity scene and bring it into HDRP. Check out the next video on the channel because we're going to add post-processing, we're going to add a background, we're going to add screen space reflections, which is pretty new in HDRP, so you want to check that out. If you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. There's going to be more videos based on this topic. Shader graph. I'm also going to take a look at decals and also VFX graph. So there's a lot more to come. Alright, I'm excited, so let's go ahead and jump into that next video and see how we can make this look a lot better. See you in the next one. Thanks a lot.